Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine this. You and your best friend work at the exact same company. You share coffee breaks, you complain about the boss, and you help each other survive the stressful workdays. But today, everything changed. Your best friend was suddenly fired, and just 1 hour later, the boss called you into the office and offered you their job, along with a big promotion and a massive pay raise. You accepted the job because, well, you need the money. But now your phone is ringing. It's your friend calling. How do you tell the person you care about most that their worst day just became your best day? Today, we are going to listen to a story about loyalty, ambition, and the most awkward phone call of a lifetime. While you listen, pay close attention to the vocabulary and natural expressions we use to talk about workplace stress and difficult conversations. Let's get started. The morning sun always hit Cubicle 4B first. For 3 years, that small space was a shared kingdom. On the left side of the low divider sat Julian, surrounded by neat stacks of colorful folders and a collection of vintage toy cars. On the right side sat Vanessa, whose desk was a chaotic mountain of sticky notes and half-empty coffee cups. They were more than just colleagues, they were a survival team. If the printer jams one more time today, I am going to throw it out the window, Vanessa groaned, rubbing her tired eyes. Julian laughed, tossing a stress ball across the divider. If you do that, make sure to record it. We can use the reward money to start our own company. They shared everything. They shared the cheap microwave lunches in the break room, the secret jokes about their boss's loud ties, and the heavy burden of endless spreadsheets. When Vanessa's car broke down in the winter, Julian drove her to work for a month. When Julian doubted his skills before a major presentation, Vanessa stayed late to help him practice. They promised each other that they would climb the corporate ladder together, hand in hand. A victory for one was a victory for both. At 10 a.m., the office phone buzzed. It was a sharp, aggressive sound. "Julian," the secretary's voice crackled through the speaker, "the director wants to see you in his office, immediately." Vanessa gave Julian a warm, encouraging thumbs up. "Go get him, partner. Maybe he's finally going to give us that budget increase." Julian smiled, straightened his collar, and walked down the long, quiet hallway. The long hallway felt unusually cold as Julian walked toward the executive suite. Through the glass walls of the main office, Vanessa watched him sit down across from the director. She couldn't hear their voices, but she saw the director's heavy hand drop a thick manila folder onto the desk. Julian's shoulders instantly dropped, and he stared fixedly at the floor. The meeting lasted less than 5 minutes. When the heavy wooden door finally swung open, Julian walked out looking completely pale. He didn't look at Vanessa. He walked straight to his desk and pulled a flattened cardboard box from under his cabinet. "Julian, what's going on?" Vanessa whispered, her heart dropping as she stood up from her chair. Julian swallowed hard, keeping his eyes focused on his desk as he began grabbing his vintage toy cars. "They're restructuring the department, Vanessa," he said, his voice cracking slightly under the pressure. "They can't do that. You've worked harder than anyone else here," she protested, her voice rising in anger. Julian just shook his head softly, packing his neat, colorful folders into the cardboard box. "Business is business, I guess," he muttered, giving her a weak, heartbreaking smile. 2 security guards appeared at the end of the aisle, standing silently to escort him out. Vanessa walked with him to the lobby, her throat tight with unspoken tears. "I'll call you tonight," she promised, wrapping him in a tight, desperate hug. Julian nodded slowly, held his box tight, and stepped into the elevator, leaving Vanessa alone in the quiet lobby. The elevator doors closed, and Vanessa stood alone in the quiet lobby. The silence of the office felt incredibly heavy now. She walked back to Cubicle 4B, staring at Julian's empty desk. The sudden emptiness of his chair made her feel completely sick to her stomach. She sat down, but she couldn't focus on her computer screen. Before she could even process her grief, her own desk phone rang. The sharp, loud sound made her jump. "Vanessa?" the secretary's voice said coolly. "The director would like to see you in his office now." Her heart began to race as she stood up. Was she next? Were they clearing out the entire department today? She walked down the long, cold hallway with shaking hands. When she entered the office, the director smiled warmly and gestured for her to sit down. "Thank you for coming in so quickly, Vanessa," he began, leaning back in his leather chair. "As you know, we had to make some difficult decisions today regarding Julian. But with Julian gone, we need someone strong to lead this department," the director continued. "We have watched your dedication, and we want to offer you his position." Vanessa stared at him, completely speechless. "It comes with a leadership title and a 30% pay raise," the director said, sliding a contract across the desk. "What do you say?" Vanessa stared at the white paper sitting on the polished wooden desk. The words employment contract looked incredibly heavy. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her mind spinning out of control. The director smiled smoothly, tapping his expensive pen on the desk. "You don't have to say anything, Vanessa. You earned this." She asked for a few minutes to think and walked slowly back to her desk. The empty chair on Julian's side of the cubicle seemed to stare back at her with silent judgment. If she took the job, she would be stepping directly into her best friend's shoes. It felt like a terrible betrayal, a dirty move to climb the corporate ladder over his back. But as she stared at her computer screen, a modern corporate reality check hit her. If she said no, the company would simply hire an outsider to take the job anyway. Refusing the promotion wouldn't bring Julian's job back to him. She thought about her high rent, her student loans, and the years she had spent working late nights. This was the big break she had dreamed of for years, even if the timing was absolutely awful. With a heavy heart and trembling fingers, she picked up her pen. She walked back into the director's office and signed her name at the bottom of the page. The contract was signed, but her stomach twisted in a knot of pure guilt. The digital clock on Vanessa's kitchen counter glowed 7:30 p.m. She sat on her sofa in the dark, staring at her phone screen. Her apartment felt completely silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. For 3 hours, she had done nothing but stare at Julian's name in her contacts list. The guilt from signing the contract felt like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. She knew she had to tell him herself, right now. If she waited, he would find out tomorrow when the official company email went out to everyone. Hearing it from human resources or a gossiping coworker would make her look like a backstabber. She took a deep, shaky breath and tapped his name to start the call. Her heart pounded against her ribs as the phone began to ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Each ring felt like a loud accusation echoing in her quiet apartment. She almost hoped he wouldn't answer, but on the 5th ring, the line clicked open. "Hey, Vanessa?" Julian's voice came through the speaker, sounding exhausted and flat.
Vanessa swallowed hard, her mouth completely dry, as she prepared to speak.
"Hey, Julian," Vanessa said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. There was a brief, heavy silence on the line. "How are you holding up?" she asked, immediately wishing she could take the silly question back. "I've been better," Julian sighed, his voice sounding incredibly distant. "I'm just sitting here looking at my resume, trying to figure out what went wrong." Vanessa's stomach twisted into a tighter knot of pure guilt. "Julian, I need to tell you something," she started, her hand shaking as she held the phone. "The director called me into his office right after you left today." She paused, waiting for him to say something, but the line remained completely silent. "He offered me your position, Julian, and I accepted it." The silence that followed was suffocating, stretching on for what felt like an eternity. "Right," Julian said, his voice completely flat and empty of any emotion. "Well, congratulations, Vanessa. You always wanted to move up." Before she could explain further, the line went dead. On Monday morning, Vanessa officially moved her things into the corner office. The room was spacious, with a large glass window that let in plenty of warm sunlight. But as she set her favorite coffee cup down on the dark mahogany desk, she felt absolutely no joy. Instead, a heavy cloud of sadness and regret seemed to fill the room. She slowly opened the top desk drawer and found a forgotten blue pen with Julian's initials printed on it. On the computer screen, his unfinished project files were still open, waiting for her attention. Every document, every strategy note, and every folder was a painful reminder of her best friend. She was now in charge of his projects, but he was no longer there to share the victory with her. A coworker knocked gently on the open glass door, smiling widely. "Congratulations on the new office, Vanessa. It looks great on you," they said cheerfully. Vanessa forced a weak, polite smile and thanked them, but her heart simply wasn't in it. As the coworker walked away, Vanessa looked out the window at the busy city below. She realized that the climb to the top of the corporate ladder was going to be very, very lonely. 3 weeks passed, and the silence between Vanessa and Julian grew wider. She sent him a text message every Tuesday asking how his job hunt was going. His replies were always short, polite, and completely cold. "Fine, thanks," or "still looking," were the only words he ever sent back. One Friday, Vanessa decided to try harder and invited him to lunch at their favorite noodle shop. "I am busy this weekend," Julian replied a few hours later, without suggesting another day. The quiet rejection hurt Vanessa deeply, but she understood his pain. At the office, Vanessa was constantly busy with meetings, budgets, and tight project deadlines. She was succeeding in her new role, but she had no one to share the excitement with anymore. The other managers talked only about profit margins, but they didn't know her jokes or her fears. She realized that her shiny new title had built a high, invisible wall between her and her best friend. Her career was moving forward fast, but her most important friendship was completely stuck. On Saturday afternoon, Vanessa walked into the local coffee shop near her apartment. The cafe was warm, filled with the rich aroma of roasted coffee and quiet chatter. As she waited in line, she turned around and froze. Julian was standing just a few feet away, holding a paper cup. For a second, they both stared in absolute shock, neither of them knowing what to say. "Julian?"
Vanessa said softly, stepping out of the line. "Hey, Vanessa," Julian replied, his voice quiet as he looked down at his coffee. The silence between them was painful, a heavy wall of unsaid words. "Can we talk, just for 5 minutes?" Vanessa asked, her eyes pleading with him. Julian hesitated, looking at the door, but then he nodded slowly and pointed to an empty corner table. They sat down, and Vanessa took a deep breath to face the elephant in the room. "I am so sorry, Julian," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I hate how things ended between us, and I miss my best friend." Julian looked at her, the coldness in his eyes finally melting into real, honest sadness. "It wasn't just the job, Julian," Vanessa whispered, shaking his head. "It was how fast you took it, while I was still trying to process losing mine. I felt replaced, like our 3 years of working together didn't mean anything to you." Vanessa reached across the table, her eyes filling with tears. "It meant everything to me, Julian. I was scared, and I made a choice, but I never wanted to hurt you." Julian looked at her hand, and after a long moment, a small, genuine smile touched his face. "I know," he said softly. "I've been angry, but I miss my friend too."
They sat in the quiet corner of the coffee shop for another hour, simply talking. It wasn't a perfect fix, but the heavy, suffocating tension was finally gone. Julian took a slow sip of his coffee and smiled, looking much more relaxed. "Actually, I have some news," he said, his voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "I have a second interview on Monday with a new marketing firm uptown. The culture seems great, and honestly, the pay is even better than our old company." Vanessa felt a huge wave of relief wash over her, and she smiled genuinely. "That is amazing, Julian. You are going to crush it," she said. They both knew that things would never go back to exactly how they were in Cubicle 4B. That chapter of their lives was closed, and they were walking down 2 different career paths now. But as they stood up to leave, Julian reached out and wrapped Vanessa in a warm, familiar hug. "Good luck with the big project next week, boss," he joked gently, using his old playful tone. Vanessa laughed, feeling the last bit of heavy guilt leave her chest. Some relationships change as we grow, but true friendship always finds a way to survive the climb.
What a bittersweet ending to a very difficult real-life situation. Navigating friendship and career growth is never easy. But now, let's turn this story into a great English learning moment. In this story, we heard some very common American business idioms. Do you remember what it means to climb the corporate ladder? Or what about the phrase, effective immediately? You can find all the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. If you enjoyed this story and want to practice your English with more real-life dramas, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a new lesson. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and learning with me today. Keep practicing, keep growing, and I will see you in our next story. Goodbye.